I want to make things on sound work.
Unfair judgment by others. Just stop
Okay,
eating
Pastor
so much
Johnson,
and
can you speak,
exercise some.
please?
You lose all this weight.
Yes, I'm so glad to be here with you this morning. A wonderful day to be alive, a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Right. And I talked to my
Okay,
doctor.
can you hear her?
Weight bias hurts.
Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect.
Your words and
Okay,
actions
just keep talking,
matter.
Pastor
Let's
Johnson.
stop weight bias.
Let's work
And we
together.
are going to be looking into the situation with Bronny.
I can hear you both. Sounds
Okay,
good.
great.
A
Son.
service message from Obesity Action Coalition.
I'll be honest, the first few months were tough.
Because they're not
When I left the
mentioning the fact
military, I
that
was
this happens so
excited for a
frequently.
fresh start, but
You know,
civilian life is
Right.
harder than I thought it would be. Figuring out
You know, it has something to do with, or maybe all to do with, the money.
of course it's the money.
The money that
and everything I'm juggling.
that these children bring into these institutions,
I really realized
and
my mental health.
Of course the money, but you know, everybody is not predisposed to a heart
get help.
condition.
Opening up to
You know,
someone was
right.
a step for me. I
Sometimes,
saw that
you know,
I'm not
everybody,
alone,
you know,
and
all
there are
these
tools to
medicines
help
are
me
not
overcome what I'm
one
going
size
through.
fits all.
With support, I feel like I'm heading in the right
You know,
direction.
So that's why you call your
Discover how
doctor if
other
you have
women
a certain
veterans like
reaction.
me
They say,
have
oh,
learned to thrive
that
after
won't work
military
for you.
service
This
by
way.
taking care of themselves and their mental health.
Right.
You know, and that's been my problem with how we've been handling healthcare over the past
See
2
that
to 3
cute
years.
little dog in the pet store
Not to
window?
mention the fact that
Chances
nothing's
are
been
it came from a
certified
puppy mill.
yet.
A breeding facility.
1 minute.
Mhm.
And we can't have the
Neglected and
discussion.
often sick dogs to churn out puppy after puppy to be sold for profit.
You know, because
Meanwhile,
myocarditis
millions of
is
wonderful, healthy pets end up in
one
animal
of these side
shelters.
effects.
This leads to the
Can
killing
be.
of more than
It
9,000
doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens to
today.
enough people,
But
and
with
it's
one
happening
simple
frequently
choice,
enough
you
for us
can
to
help
talk about it, pay
just by
attention to
deciding
it.
to adopt instead of
But
purchase
even
your
if that's
next pet.
not it, if
Animal
you are
shelters
predisposed to a
full of
heart
amazing
condition,
pets looking for a
maybe
home.
the
When you
testing
adopt
before
your
you
new best
join one of
friend,
these
not
teams
only
needs
are
to be
you
more
saving
thorough.
a life, you're taking
30 seconds.
Right.
You know, it's just
when
there
your
are a
friends
lot
see
of
the
questions
smart choice and impact
that need to
you've
be
made,
answered.
they adopt their next pet and share with 5 of their
Okay,
friends,
let's have a
who
great
share with
show.
5 more. Before long, thousands get involved. Pet stores stop selling dogs from puppy mills, and even more lives are saved. And with your help,
Okay, we can
save
hear that
them
in the
all.
10
background.
seconds.
Okay, we're coming up. We're coming up.
bestfriends.org/puppy
Okay.
to learn more.
Stand by.
Play
Thank
WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Get a little bit of feedback. We're going to work that out. Wednesday, July 26, 2023. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Please meet my morning stars on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show. Let's get to it, everybody. Wow, we have watched this child grow up, and it's been so exciting to see his father guide him through life. And it turns out they have the same interest. Of course, you're speaking of little Bronny James, who is now a big guy. He's a freshman at USC, one of the top college programs in the nation. I got one of my cousins, who's my godson, who's there too, but he is in television and theater. It's a wonderful school, tremendous resources. And so it turns out that while he was in basketball practice, he had a heart attack, cardiac arrest. Healthy, and what happened? Indeed, what's happening to our young athletes? It's happening at an accelerated pace now, but we have had the number one killer of our student athletes is cardiac arrest. Or they are having cardiac arrest. What's going on? Are we pushing these young bodies too far, too fast? What kind of resources, particularly when schools don't have the resources of a USC? USC is a school of the wealthy, very, very, very heavily resourced school. But what about many of our HBCUs? That was something that Deion Sanders saw when he became a coach. He was like, whoa, you all don't have much of what you need. but the money's not there, not for them anyway. So what about, how do we protect these athletes at every level? And I would even say it in grammar school, because now we're tracking the development of these athletes that closely. We're watching them as they go to high school, as they come out of high school, because many of them come out of high school ready to go to the pros. So let's talk about that today. Let's talk about that today. And what should you, as a parent, be on the lookout for, or as a guardian, what should you be on the lookout for? What test should your child undergo? I mean, should there be a protocol that's observed before your children go to these top programs? We've got to talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show, because we, of course, are sending our love and prayers to LeBron and Savannah James. They've done so many wonderful things. And, just I know for all that they have right now, all they want is for their baby to be okay. My mother often says that you are as happy as your unhappiest child, and you are as healthy as the unhealthiest person in your family. Trust me, I get it. When any of us have gotten sick, we're all sick. When any of us have gotten well, we're all well. We all have a good day. And so let's talk about this, because this is happening to a lot of people who don't get this spotlight. So let us use this spotlight to shine the light on what's going right and what's not going right in the sports world. Everybody, let's get to some of these headlines. A federal judge blocked President Biden's new asylum restrictions for migrants. The rules, which penalize migrants who cross the border illegally and reward those who schedule appointments to seek asylum, violate federal law, according to this judge. The Biden administration had credited temporary rules with a slowdown in illegal crossings. The government was given 14 days to appeal before the ruling takes effect. The UPS strike, it looks like this strike of 340,000 employees has been averted. The delivery giant and the Teamsters, who represent these 340,000 employees, reached a tentative deal on a 5-year contract yesterday. If ratified next month, and it still has to be ratified, it would include a $2.75 an hour raise for all UPS employees, higher pay for part-time workers, and air conditioning in new delivery vans. A crucial ocean current is showing signs of collapse. A current carrying warm water from the tropics to the North Atlantic has become slower and less resilient due to melting Arctic ice, according to a new study. The collapse within the next few decades would cause dramatic weather changes on both sides of the Atlantic, which we're seeing now, but scientists can't agree on the timeline. How about now, everybody? The Federal Reserve is expected to raise interest rates again today, and Harvard is facing a federal civil rights inquiry over their legacy admissions. And of course, everyone's talking about Brodie James, and we are too. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. He suffered a heart attack, 18-year-old. Had a medical emergency. It was a cardiac arrest, a heart attack at the University of Southern California on Monday. He went into ICU, but thanks be to God, he's out of ICU now, but everyone's still watching, waiting, hoping, and praying that he and so many of these athletes will be all right. Everybody in Chicago, 91 degrees, partly cloudy, and the haze. Remember, Chicago is one of the 20 cities that has the worst air quality in the world because of these Canadian wildfires, and I'm sure other factors too. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, 96 degrees will be the high. The heat is moving our way, everybody. And they're on the lookout for severe thunderstorms until 4 p.m. this afternoon. Please be careful up there, my AM 950 radio family. Major League Baseball, the Mariners 9, the Twins 7, and the Cubs bested the White Sox 7-3 yesterday in our crosstown series. That series will continue tonight. Who's going to come out on top? We will have to see. Of course, the ladies from the United States, the soccer team, they are seeking to have a three-peat. Will they be able to do it? Well, today they face off against the Netherlands. We'll see how they do. Canada will face off against Ireland. And now live, Spain is sitting atop Zambia 2-0. And Japan, well, they won 2-0 over Costa Rica. In the WNBA, the Aces 107, the Sky 95, and the Mystics will be playing the Lynx today. And those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Hey, Shirley Montgomery. Hey, Kenneth. Hey, so many of you, Daryl, and you all are joining. Please go over to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Hey, Andre, Raphael, sending you so much love. Everybody get on over to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I understand the sound is a little bit better there anyway. Pastor Vicki Johnson, how are you today?
I am doing great. What about you,
I
Santita?
am doing great, just trying to survive these allergies. Now they've gotten me. They didn't get me in the spring, but boy, they've gotten me now. But I'm here. I am here.
Thank
So
God.
when everyone sees me dabbing my nose, my asthma. I'm not asthma. I have not really had any asthma attacks since I've lost my weight. But my allergies, I'm having a tough time today. But I'm here, so it's all good. It's not going to
Great,
take me out.
great.
So, what's on your mind today? We do need some good news.
Well, good morning, Santita, and good morning to all of your morning stars and friends. There is good news. This has been a season of coming together. Graduations, class reunions, weddings, retirement celebrations, birthdays, and the like. Last week was the Rainbow Push Coalition Convention with the coming together of some of our founding members as well as new members and the 84 and 88 campaign workers. This past weekend, we celebrated my matriarchal family reunion with relatives assembling here in Chicago from across the country. At each of these gatherings, we were all so happy to be together, reminiscing about back in the day before getting caught up to the current times. Then there were some who spent so much time reminiscing that they could not find their way to navigate into the present,
Dr. Knight and his son.
the future. It is always good to connect with old friends and family. We need to allow ourselves time to be with people who give us that warm, fuzzy feeling by just being in their presence, just being around those who knew us when and can appreciate and celebrate us now. People who were a part of, as Curtis Mayfield would say, or was it Gladys Knight, the making of you. People who tell us we still look the same as we did 40 or 50 years ago, even if it's not necessarily completely true. Being around them can even be therapeutic. But there comes a time when we need to move from where we were to where we are so that we can plot where we are going, because time really does keep on slipping into the future. There comes a time when we need to utilize the past as a tool to build the future. As we continue participating in wonderful summer events, seeing people we have not seen in years, sharing truths and lies, enjoy the time, but be sure to take what you have to create a world that you can be proud of in years to come. Look to the future and don't get stuck in the past. If you will do this, and I believe that you will, then to me, that's good news.
I love it. Time keeps on slipping into the future. I love
Into
that.
the future.
Oh,
Yes.
you're gonna make me find that song today. That is a great song. Oh my gosh. Oh, I want to fly like an eagle. I let my spirit
Yes.
carry me. I just want to fly like an eagle to the sea. Oh, there's a solution, everybody. There's a solution. Thank you so
Right.
much. How can we worship with you and where?
You can worship with me each Sunday starting at Lebanon Lutheran Church, 9 o'clock a.m., 13100 South Manistee, and then at St. Thomas Lutheran Church on 80th and Jeffrey Boulevard at 11:30 a.m. for an hour of power. Both services can be viewed on Facebook.
I love it. I love it. Sending you so much love. Sending you so much love. And you know what? Please, Pastor Ricky, join me in wishing our morning star, Daryl Prunty, a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Daryl. Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday. Happy birthday,
Hey,
Daryl.
yay. Woo. Another one. He said he turned 64 today. Look, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. Every year God gives you, every day, every moment, every second. It is a blessing. Uh, Here or in eternity. Okay. I'm sending you so
Yeah.
much love. Glad that you're still here, though. Sending you so much love, Pastor Vicki Johnson. Let me go to you. I think I've got Dr. Knighton up already, and I'm so glad about that because boy, oh boy, she sent me a text yesterday that about made me fall out my chair. Uh, Little LeBron James, and I say little because we've seen him grow up, everybody. And some people, I mean, John Kennedy, the most gorgeous man alive at the time, bless his heart, he was still John to everybody. Now I missed that piece, okay, um, but to people of a certain generation, they watched him grow up, and we've watched LeBron James grow up. Well, according to TMZ, a 911 call was made at 9:26 a.m. on Monday from USC's Galen Center, where the team plays and practices. Of course, young LeBron James Jr. is a freshman at the vaunted USC basketball program. And it turns out that he had collapsed and he was a 4-star recruit. He is that, chose USC over Oregon and Ohio State. He's one of the most highly recruited uh, prospects for college basketball in the country, not just because he is LeBron James' son. I mean, if he can play, he's an excellent player. That having been said, he had a heart attack. And heart attacks are not uncommon. You keep seeing in the headlines, this is rare. No, the number one killer of these student athletes, heart attacks. Heart attacks. So what's going on? He collapsed in practice. He was in the ICU, but now he's no longer in ICU. He's in stable condition. Thankfully, his condition is stabilized. But this is a seemingly healthy young man. Really, let's say he's a growing kid because he's only 18. But something is happening, and it's happening with increased frequency. And a lot of people have a lot of questions. The media calls some of the questions conspiracy theories. No, in science, you put everything on the table. Stop calling it a conspiracy theory. I mean, you have fallout from all kinds of medications that you take. And if this is part of the fallout, then we should discuss that. But if he also was predisposed to heart disease, we need to know that too. And what kind of tests need to be taken in advance so that we can end this problem, because this is the number one killer of student athletes. Not being struck to the chest, not a concussion, cardiac arrest. Dr. Shanina Knighton, it is a joy to be with you, infection preventionist and of course registered nurse. We're not prescribing. What we're doing is describing and trying to find out what happened, because this happens far too frequently for us to ignore it, Dr. Knighton.
Yeah, so I was going to say, Santita, I do, even too, I was going to say I'm not a cardiologist, but with my limited knowledge, know that a heart attack does differ from cardiac arrest.
Okay. And they're using that
And so,
interchangeably. Now, his family said he had cardiac arrest. What is the difference between a heart attack and cardiac arrest?
so a heart attack is typically brought on by some other condition of, let's say, a narrowing of the arteries, a hardening of the arteries, some sort of blockage that occurs. So it could be because that narrowing or, like, let's say that hardening occurs, then it causes like heart blockage. It could be because of a blood clot that's in the heart. So it's something that's in place. And typically when things like that happen, it happens because of lifestyle habits. Lifestyle habits would typically bring about a heart attack. When we're talking about cardiac arrest, we're looking at the fact that there could be a lot of it goes unexplained, meaning that something electrically could have gone wrong. There could have been, like, let's say, an enlargement of the heart. It could have been, like, let's say, some sort of congenital defect. And when I say congenital defect, that is something that someone is born with that may have gone undiagnosed or untreated. So when we mention cardiac arrest, it's not specifically because someone does have some sort of heart disease. When we're talking about a cardiac arrest, the question comes is, do they have some sort of defect, or is there something that was going on that triggered that? Meaning, I've seen situations where people may have had, like, let's say, issue with their asthma, and as an issue with their asthma, then it impacted their heart and sent them into cardiac arrest. So it's not necessarily something that's directly, it has to be something that's precipitating it. In this case, it's unknown. So with a lot of younger adults, it's unknown what is triggering their sudden cardiac arrest.
Well, we've got to talk about this. And we also have to talk about the fact that Dr. Knighton, as I was, me, after I talked with you, I started looking things up. The number one cause of death with these student athletes in the United States is cardiac arrest. It's not concussions. It's not anything else. And there's one death in a high school student athlete every 3 days. That's a lot, folks. So something is, we need to have this discussion and put everything on the table. Put everything on the table. He might be allergic to aspirin, ibuprofen, some other kind of medicine. And if that is the case, stop calling people conspiracy theorists. Put all the stuff out there. Whenever I take anything, I took some medicine yesterday that knocked me out. The fact of me trying to get better is this medicine, which is the only one that I could take, knocks me out. That's a side effect, but there are others. And one of the things that we've learned from you, Dr. Knighton, is that we need to read the fine print. Get that magnifying glass so you can see what the possible effects can be of anything that you take. Anything. So let's talk about that. And, if you are predisposed to heart disease, should you be playing sports? Should these schools know more about your family's health history? Although when you are in these income generating sports, and I had a brother who played Division I football at UVA, you are property and you are working for the school. They know what your health is. We need to talk about this on the Santita Jackson Show. So I want you to call me. Let me know what you think. They're shutting down one avenue of discussion, which is unfair. It's unfair. We need to talk about all the possibilities as we pray for his health and strength. We've already been traumatized at the beginning of the year. Look at what happened to Damar Hamlin. A lot of things went through our minds, and we need to talk about these things so that they don't happen anymore. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Yeah, girl, 1 every 3 days, a high school student dies from cardiac arrest. Of one of these student athletes. Is that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
Girl, please. Look, when you start digging down on the information, you will go, wow. This is a whole lot. It's a whole lot. So, I just
Right, and I
know.
think, and that's another thing too, Santita. So when you mention possibilities or like what those other avenues are, and just even me too, mentioning like, let's say, asthma and just different things like there is a such thing that's called exercise-induced hypoxemia. And what that is the body's low oxygen in the blood. And that typically happens like, when an athlete is training like at high intensity, like they're at such a high intense level that their tissues tend to like lack oxygen. And when that happens, that also too can lead to a cardiac arrest. And so we don't know what kind of exercise regimen like he was up under. understanding like he is a freshman, let's say, at their school, and it could be, nerves and anxiety. So there's so many different things, a heightened, like, let's say, level of performance that he might have thought that was needed. So I'm just saying, like, there's a significant amount of things that can be happening that could have brought this on. But I think the most important thing that we have to discuss is that 90% of people that experience cardiac arrest outside of hospital settings die.
Mm.
And so the fact that he is still living and they were able to get him in stable condition, that is a big deal because that's not necessarily the case.
Attorney Hoffler's on.
A lot of individuals that do end up going into this. And I know I had spoke with you yesterday just even about the student, that we had in summer camp where, long story short, his mother didn't share that he had asthma because she thought that would have kept him from being allowed to come to camp. And as a result, he died 3 days into camp because he left camp on the third day after having so much fun and ended up having acute respiratory failure at home as a result of not having that oxygen. And so, again, these are things that can happen that are predisposed that can lead to cardiac arrest.
Well, I want you to mention that on there. CK?
Attorney Jones is on.
Yeah,
And,
good morning.
and would you reach out to Attorney Holmes early, please?
Would you like me to call her now?
Yeah, him, yes.
Santita,
Yes.
I have a son who's asthmatic.
Now, let me ask you this. Are you on speaker?
So I am. Do I need to put it closer? I usually am on speaker, but I do it close because I got iPhone 14.
No. It just we lose something. It's better. It sounds better when you're closer.
Reverend Yuri went to voicemail, but I'll try calling him once we're on live.
Okay.
Start talking on the.
Yeah. That's better.
30 seconds.
Santita, we launched our new practice. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
Shannon is part of it.
10 seconds.
This is completely.
Okay, stand by. Hold on, honey. We're coming up.
Okay.
Stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am free.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Please meet me here at WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278, and meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Let's talk about LeBron James Jr. Everyone has been waiting to see how he's going to perform as a Trojan, of course, at USC. So excited to watch him grow and develop and to see LeBron James and Savannah James grow their family. It's just been a wonderful thing. And so to see this 18-year-old finally decide, not Ohio State, not Oregon, I'm going to go to USC. It was very exciting. But something happened on Monday, about 9:26 a.m. in the morning, according to TMZ, and they get the reports first, the emergency, there was an emergency, and 911 was called from the Galen Center, which is on the USC campus where the basketball team practices, because young LeBron James Jr. had cardiac arrest, 18 years of age. What many of us do not know is that cardiac arrest is the number one killer of our student athletes. Number one. It happens, many of the headlines say it's rare, but it happens frequently enough for us to really try to dig in and find out what's going on. Now, when you look at corporate media, they will tell you one strain of thought is a conspiracy. Stop that. That's unscientific. Scientists do not care about they care that they get the accurate outcome, but they don't care about the input. The data is what it is. If some medicines that we have been taking are inducing myo or pericarditis, we need to understand that. If you have an intolerance for aspirin or ibuprofen, you need to understand that. If this is not the right season for you, if you have a history of heart disease in your family, everything should be on the table. Everything should be on the table. So let's talk about that. 18 years of age. I know for all of the material goods, Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Attorney Darrell Jones. I can't wait to have Attorney Shannon Holmes, your law partner, with you, C.K. Hoffler and Dr. Shanina Knighton. And let me start with you, Dr. Knighton. I mean, for all that they have, I know they would give it all up to make sure that this boy is okay. I can only imagine what that family have been going through to hear that to hear for his baby sister and baby brother to hear that their tall, strong 18-year-old brother had cardiac arrest. I can only imagine what LeBron James and Mrs. Savannah James went through. These have been going through these past few days and what they're going through right now. They just want to know that their baby is okay. Cardiac arrest at 18? No, it's not infrequent, everybody. It might be infrequent, but it is not uncommon. The American Academy of Pediatrics show that this sudden cardiac arrest, and according to the Mayo Clinic as well, is the leading cause of death in young athletes. It's the leading cause of death. There's something going on here, and we need to talk about it. Let me start with you, because we did start with you. I want you to give us a comment before I pivot to you, to the rest of the panel. Uh, are you surprised, Dr. Knighton? And of course, you are an infection preventionist, you are a registered nurse, and we are not prescribing or diagnosing. What we're doing is exploring. We're exploring on the show today. When I read that, according to the Mayo Clinic and according to these other societies, that the leading cause of death of these young athletes, cardiac arrest, it's something. Something just doesn't compute with that. What should we be on the lookout for? And now more physicians are there. They're now looking to tell us about the signs of cardiac arrest, the warning signs, so you can maybe avoid it. Number one, are you surprised that the leading cause of death among these student athletes is cardiac arrest? Dr. Knighton.
Good morning. So it's
Sent you a text.
Santita, because as much as I would like to be surprised, it's hard to say that I am, because there's so many different factors that are playing into this that I don't think are often considered. Meaning that, are we talking about, like, let's say maybe congenital defects that may have not been identified? And when I say congenital, these are things that someone potentially is born with, that because maybe there aren't advances in technologies, let's say during the time of when these individuals are born, that something like some sort of anomaly or abnormality is not caught early on. And while these individuals, meaning these students, they do undergo extensive tests, it's still no guarantee that if you are running standardized tests that you will catch, things that are not typical. The other piece is, too, sports like they are now is not sports like they were when we were growing up. Meaning, yeah, you might have played and, might have did your best and that might have been good, but they actually have like full-blown sports programs now, that end up being a pipeline into a lot of these professional sports. So I can imagine that the intensity of these trainings go up. And as a result of that ended up leading to the possibility or increasing the possibility of cardiac arrest. So I'm sure that these numbers have not always been this way. But it's important for people to think through potentially threshold. And I'm saying threshold of training, meaning, is the training causing someone to have some sort of like chest pain or discomfort? Are you getting like rapid or irregular heartbeats? And me as a parent, these would be questions that I would be asking my kid. How are you getting short of breath? Are you getting ready to like near faint? at practice. I actually have a nephew that, I kid you not, he was on a basketball team maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. So we're talking about at this time that this kid was literally, what? He had to be maybe about 11, 12 years old. And I kid you not, his dad was having to take him in regularly. And it still was unknown of why he was fainting and passing out at practice. And so it is something that is unknown. Unfortunately, the explanation is not given. But I think the biggest thing is identification, that if any of these signs or symptoms are happening, making sure that those that are around the individual are aware so they can seek the best care as soon as possible. Because just as I pointed out, Santita, 90% of cases that occur, when we're talking about cardiac arrest, they don't end up living if they happen outside of a hospital setting. And so we're talking about something that can be serious and something that can be deadly. I was explaining to Santita before, as well as the audience, that there is a difference when we're talking about cardiac arrest versus a heart attack. Heart attack meaning 9 times out of 10 is something that's induced, like your coronary arteries are becoming blocked. The heart muscle itself, it needs blood supply, and something is not occurring as a result of something being restricted, like your arteries or your vessels could be hardened. They could be narrow. They could be full of plaques, which happens over time when that fat starts to harden in those actual vessels. Whereas the cardiac arrest is when somebody's heart, like it stops pumping blood, and they stop breathing normal. So that is a completely different thing. Whereas a heart attack is almost like these things are working up overtime in order for someone to not have the oxygen that they need that's going to their heart.
Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. What do you make of all of this? Because before I go to you, attorney C.K. Hoffler, I would think as a scientist that we would be able to discuss any possibility. And certain possibilities, certain strains of speculation have been shut down. And I don't think that's helpful, Dr. Knighton. Because I think we need to know everything, every possibility, anything that could indicate why this happened to young Bronny James and these other young athletes. I mean, we have a lot of athletes. I mean, it's the leading cause of death of student athletes, cardiac arrest. If it's a genetic predisposition to heart disease, if it's a blow to the chest, if it's some medicine you've taken, I think all of that should be on the table. Because, medicine is not one size fits all. That's been part of the challenge we've had over the past few years. Some people can take this, some people can't take it. Some people can take that, some people can't take that. Is it important for us to explore every possibility so that we can know not just what happened to him? I think that this big light that he has gives us an opportunity. Like with Damar Hamlin, that was a conversation that was shut down as well. Well, we can find out what's going on, because so many of these young athletes who come out of high school, quite frankly, ready to go pro, Dr. Knighton. I mean, I'm with you. I think that their training is far more strenuous than the training that I saw athletes go through when I was a teenager 40 years ago. Dr. Knighton.
Yep, absolutely. And the thing is, and I was bringing this up before, exercise-induced hypoxemia. What is that? Hypoxemia just in itself means that there is a lack of oxygen in the blood. And that happens when you have athletes that are undergoing severe, intense exercise. And that means that their tissues, so we're talking about at the tissue level, their body is deficient of oxygen. And we're talking about tissues. That could be tissues of the lungs. That could be tissues of the heart. And so typically things like this would be a predisposal to cardiac arrest. So if you can't even get oxygen to your muscles or getting oxygen to your organs that you need in order to be able to move, then naturally things are going to stop. It is the blood that carries the oxygen You know how essential that is to the heart. And so I think it's also important for us to view that as well, that for, whether it is Bronny James, whether it is a young athlete that is changing the rigor of a program that they are getting ready to go into, transitioning from that high school to college, I'm sure it could be much different when we're talking about the level of training. So there's a lot of different factors that can go into that, but it's also just being aware that these are things that happen to individuals that do undergo training that maybe is unexpected.
And as much as they try to shut down the conversation, Carol Soskin, my sister from another mister, is saying that, the conversation about what caused this is going on. And that's why I have to be careful because, I want to stay on the air. And the sad thing is you can't mention certain things and stay on the air. Either, it's awful. We can't shut down conversations, not when people's lives are at risk. Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Now, I know this impacts you in a special way. I mean, my brother played Division I football, but all of my brothers went through college on football scholarships. Jesse, Johnny, Yusuf, and Yusuf. And, it was always, it always pained me to see them in July, because when you play college football, you are practicing outside in that heat in July. And and when you're in one of these income generating sports, you're practicing all year. So it bothers me that that's what's happening with I worry about them. I just worry. Are they getting enough water? Is it just too hot for them to be out here? Attorney C.K. Hoffler, first your reaction to hearing that this 18-year-old child had a heart attack.
Well, my reaction is, Santita, good morning to everyone. It could be me. I could be that mother. I've made it very clear, and I've actually formed a new practice surrounding college athletes recently. We just launched yesterday. Both of my sons play Division I football. Both of my sons have been training for Division I football for 4 years. What did that mean in my household? That meant 4 days a week at 5:30 in the morning, conditioning training, and twice a week with position coaches. And that's basically during COVID and for 4 years. And so I have one son that does have asthma, and both sons have had shoulder surgery. At age 18, before going to college, I just want to put that in proper perspective. So when I hear this is literally hitting close to home. This is why I have created an NIL practice to help as much as I can. I can't determine what my children do. I guess they're no longer children, they're young men. But I can do everything I can in my power as a parent to ensure that they are protected. And when it comes to the physicality, all the things that Dr. Knighton said, you really don't know. You really don't know, even when you're vigilant. I'm a vigilant. Everybody went and had, all the medical testing as deep as we could and all that kind of stuff. But you really just don't know. And we are facing incredibly hot temperatures. So these kids are working out in intense heat, which of course exacerbates everything. And so all of this, and I will say, I do look at everything. I know that when my kids were in private school, during the COVID testing and COVID vaccinations, the kids could not go back to practice without being cleared by a cardiologist. So I think that what you have to do, what I've had to do in my personal family for my children, is go that extra mile to ensure that they are tested. Don't just take, football teams, and I'm not mentioning any specific team. I'm just saying when you have billion-dollar operations, their interest is making sure that the players are on the field. They want them healthy because if you're healthy and if their minds are clear, they will perform better because it's a billion-dollar industry. But I think you have to not just leave it to the schools. You have to also, as an individual, take it in your own hands to do everything to minimize the likelihood of injuries, because injuries can happen at any particular point. And medical issues can happen at any particular point because you just don't know what could happen with a blow if it's a contact sport. What could happen with, like, even if it's not a contact sport, if, you're dehydrated, if you're a track star, if you're training long distance in the heat, unprecedented heat, that's what we're experiencing with these fires, with smoke inhalation, spreading from places. So all of these things, these environmental concerns, can impact how our kids perform on and off the field. So I am very concerned. My heart goes out to LeBron James and his family, but my reaction was it could have been me. And that is devastating because that is when I go to bed every night and actually when I wake up in the morning, in the middle of the day, I pray for my children, not just because they're Black men and I feel they have a target on their back. That's a whole nother social issue. But I pray for their safety because they are college athletes. And again, they're college athletes by choice. Nobody forced them to be college athletes, but they're college athletes by choice. So I pray that this journey will not end tragically. I pray that they won't have a cardiac arrest. I pray that all of the medical issues that we see manifesting with not just college athletes, but NFL athletes, that I don't see in my children. So it's very personal to me, but I think that we have to educate and talk about these issues. I mean, not be afraid. It's unfortunate that there's censorship so we can't have real candid discussions, but I do think that it's important to talk about these issues and for families to recognize that they are there so they can take appropriate precautions if they are in a position to do that. And unfortunately, a lot of families are not in a position to take precautions beforehand to do. And I can tell you, with all the extensive training that my kids have done, they could still be injured the same because I'm pretty sure that LeBron James' son did the same type of regimen. Mm-hmm. So even with all of the training, all of that, all of the precautions, it can still happen, and that's fear. But without precautions, who knows? Maybe you lessen the likelihood with all the training and precautions. I don't know, but it's very scary.
Well, Attorney Darrell Jones, and you're an athlete, you're a marathoner. And, we can be in and out of these cool places, but, this is a time of year when everybody is facing dehydration, particularly with this record heat. But just as someone who is athletic and who's in great shape, what did you think when you heard about this 18-year-old having cardiac arrest, and when you know that the number one cause of death among student athletes is cardiac arrest? I was shocked by that.
Yeah, and good morning, Santita, and good morning to everyone that's on the panel and the listeners. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely correct. One of the first things I thought when I heard about Bronny James was that I was in amazement. I just couldn't believe that this had happened to him, and of course, my heart went out to him as well as the family. But I think that one of the things that we have to take away from this is that no one is exempt from experiencing a cardiac arrest. This is a situation where we have people that are tremendously trained, and I think that's one of the things that CK was lifting up. That these are real athletes that are training throughout the year. This is the passion of what they do, and a large part of their purpose. And so, when you look at the conditioning that they've gone in, and all the assistance that they have around them to be certain that they have the proper health care and everything around them, it becomes concerning that that this still happens. It certainly is a warning light to go off to all parents and young folks that are involved in the sports that you need to be very mindful of not only your hydration but any irregularity that you feel within your body. Now, there's no indication from what I've seen so far that there's any irregularity, anything that would alert Bronny James or the parents that something might be amiss. The fortunate thing here is that they had appropriate medical care on site. Mm-hmm. I wonder with some of the smaller colleges that may not have as much money and as much bandwidth to be able to have all of the healthcare stuff that's in place, what might happen? And that becomes a concern, as well as the high schools, because you got to remember, he's 18, so he's maybe a year removed from high school. So, you have all of that that's in place. And so, when I heard about this, I immediately thought about, all the times that I've known runners and marathoners, half marathoners, that do go into cardiac arrest in the middle of in the run or at the end of the run, and the hydration and all the other things that go into place. But it is a call to alert. It certainly is a call, an awakening for folks to be certain that they're paying very close attention to the young athletes and their conditioning and any pre-existing condition that they may have. And that's not saying that there's any pre-existing condition with Bronny James, because we don't, at least I don't know, and I haven't heard. But we certainly got to be certain that we take appropriate steps to try to address anything that may be there, and to take the best steps to be prepared in case something should happen.
You're right. And the thing is, we don't know. I mean, there's a lot that you don't know. There's a lot that you find out along the journey of life. That having been said, shutting down an avenue, CK, in which, whatever it could have been, I don't think it's helpful. I am tired of covering for Big Pharma. I really am. Because whatever it is, I mean, if I overuse my inhaler, I jeopardize my heart. Okay? So just like everybody, put it all on the table, all of it. Because it could be your child. It could be you. It could be your godchild, your niece, your nephew. The number one killer of student athletes is cardiac arrest. What kind of test do our children need to undergo before they play these sports? What kind of genetic mapping needs to happen? All of that, to me, CK, I got 30 seconds. We need to find all of those things out.
Absolutely, Santita. And the one thing we may never hear about, high-profile athletes when this happens, because they're HIPAA concerns. And people may want to preserve their privacy because they don't want to impact their career. But it is important to investigate, because while our children are dying, this is going to become a public health crisis if we don't pay closer attention to it.
It already is. It happens every 3 days for high school student athletes. Every 3 days. All my information is coming from the Mayo Clinic. And all of these vaunted institutions, they have the data out there. It's out there. So what are we going to do about it? Call me, text me, 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. You can't text me there, but you can call. I want to know what your thoughts are. And should we put every possibility on the table and rule things in and out as we investigate? This is about our lives. This is not about saving someone's business or an industry. It's about your life. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. This is ridiculous. But you all talk amongst yourselves. I'm still trying to get someone here. And remember, we're on Facebook, so, everybody wants to. Mary says it already is a public health crisis. I'm with you, Mary. It already is.
Santita, it's a public health crisis, but it's not been declared a public health crisis. COVID was declared a public health crisis. And when something, and I defer to Dr. Knight and doctors about this, but when something is declared a public health crisis, there are protocols that kick in. That has not happened. And so even though I, as an interested party, believe it's a public health crisis, or it will become pretty soon, it's not been declared one. Until it's declared, there's not going to be the level of attention and resources dedicated to it.
Yeah, I mean, because when in May, when COVID was no longer an emergency, the money was pulled.
Right.
And quite frankly, so the protocols.
Right, it was taken off the public health crisis spectrum. So those are the buzzwords, public health crisis. So even though, there are a lot of things in our community or in communities that are public health crises, but if they're not declared by the federal government as such, there's no funding, there's no attention that's given. Certainly not by the media, because this could be a one-time story because it's LeBron James' son. But there are many sons that face the same fate, many daughters that face the same fate.
But, I'm just saying, certainly with HIPAA, I don't think that anyone should feel obligated to disclose their health publicly,
And
whether you've
I
taken a shot or
understand that
not.
too, but I also
But I think that as a public person, it's when I had weight loss surgery, my father started calling people from the hospital who were overweight and who he said,
Reverend Urizon.
thank you. I think my daughter's onto something. She just had something that might be helpful to you. And my father said to me, we need to talk about this because God has given you grace. And so what you've got to do with this grace is help somebody. You don't get all the spotlight for you. I'm sorry, Dr. Knighton. And hello, Reverend Dr. Yeary.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. Dr. Knighton?
Oh, no, I was just going to add like that. Like, it is sad because I do know that HIPAA is in place, but understanding like the why behind the why can help other individuals. And sometimes, I'm be honest, like I say this all the time, but sugarcoating stuff has gotten us in a lot of hot water, and I'm talking about just in general, because we don't talk about things or things aren't able to closely be explored to where we are able to come up with better solutions and put alternatives out there. And so it is disgusting to me that in a world of even being a scientist, that people want to present bias or automatically jump to conclusions without us even being what I would say all of us have gone through, and that's being able to test the hypothesis, right? And so that's being able to make a statement and say that this is a possibility and then being able to test against it. So I find it disheartening that whether people are out here saying, okay, that it's potentially due to a previous heart condition, it's due to its exercise regimen, it's due to a vaccine, it's due to because he was taking energy drinks. People don't know, but it doesn't mean that these options should not be placed on the table for us to be able to understand what is happening. Because again, as BK pointed out, while this is a high-profile individual, unfortunately, I can tell you that this happens. It shouldn't happen as often as it does. But we also know that the other contributing factors do play a big part in this, and you do not know. We don't know what we don't know. But if we can't have the conversation around what we speculate, then we can't get to those answers, and that's what concerns me.
Well, and to call people conspiracy theorists because they're speculating. They're doing it with Jamie Foxx. I mean, am I not allowed to speculate? This is my health, for heaven's sake. But this is where the intersection of big business and my business is a problem. I'm tired of covering for big pharma and big business. This is my health. And whatever it is, if it's ibuprofen, if it's an energy drink, whatever it is, put it out there. If it's a medicine you've taken, put it out there. Prove it, disprove it, and deal with it.
I sent you a text.
Oh, thank you so much, Alex. Hey, would you, CK, find out, see if Shannon is still available. CK?
Okay, I'll give him a call.
Yeah, because we've been trying to reach him.
Oh, okay, I'll give him a call.
Okay,
all right,
thanks. So, okay, well, I can't wait to hear what everybody's got to say, but it's, Mary, thank you so much. Thank you for being with us today. This is, I can only imagine what his family have been through these past couple of days, these past few days. I know. Oh my gosh. I can only imagine. I know my reaction to hearing. Yes.
I got Shannon on my line. Do you want him to call back in, or y'all want to call him again?
Alex, what should he do?
I'll call him.
Okay, he's going to get a call from the station right now.
Okay, Shannon. So Shannon, hang up.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'll call him as soon as we're live.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I sent you the link to our new NIL law group.
Okay.
So I sent you the link to it. And one of the things that we advocate, Shannon's written a book about this, is that college athletes need to treat themselves like they are CEOs.
30 seconds.
And one of the teams is for legal advisors, but healthcare advisors, financial advisors. These are for college athletes.
Hold on.
Because of all the opportunities they have now.
No. Hold that thought, because we're about to come up. I want you to give us that and give it to us as succinctly.
10
as that.
seconds.
Stand by. 7, 6,
Stand by.
5, 4, 3, 2.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Wednesday, July 26, 2023. Coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, as well as the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please, everybody, get on over there and like and share. We're talking about LeBron James Jr. We've watched him grow up, and we've been thrilled to watch he and his father work together. Indeed, his father says, my dream is to play with my son. He said, then I'm done. And what a dream. And they're almost there. And yet now that dream might have to be deferred, if not, kind of put to rest, because we just found out that LeBron James, Bronny James, as he is known affectionately to all of us, had cardiac arrest on Monday while at practice at USC. One of the most highly recruited basketball players, high school basketball players in the nation. He decided to go to USC, one of the top programs in the country. He had access to them all. And what happened? This happens far more frequently than we discuss. Indeed, even though the headlines say that this is rare, the fact is the number one killer of of student athletes is cardiac arrest. Why? What's not happening? What protocols need to be put in place? What tests should these athletes undergo maybe before they even get to high school? What should happen? How can we avoid this? How can this be put to rest? We've got Attorney C.K. Hoffler, of course, Attorney Shannon Holmes, Attorney Darrell Jones, and Dr. Shanina Knighton, and Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, Esquire. And for many of these kids, it's not this simple. LeBron James, I'm not going to say that he doesn't have to do this. He is a young man, although his parents are wealthy. He has to make it in this world for himself. And it's clear that his parents have shown him that. That's what you see with his work ethic and him becoming one of the top athletes in his space. But there's some people for whom this is a real bread and butter issue. And they need these scholarships. And they might ignore signs that something is wrong just so that they can take their stipends and send them home to keep their mother and father or family in their homes, in their apartments, or keep them fed. That's what it comes down to. So let's talk about it. Here at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to know what your thoughts are today. And what do we know? What don't we know? What can we find out about what happened to young LeBron James and what's happening to more and more student athletes all over the country? But let's get some of these headlines out the way. A federal judge blocked President Biden's new asylum restrictions for migrants, the rules which penalize migrants who cross the border illegally and reward those who schedule appointments to seek asylum violate federal law, according to a judge. A potentially devastating UPS strike, 340,000 workers, was averted. The delivery giant and the Teamsters, their representatives, the union that represents all 340,000 of the employees, reached a tentative deal on a 5-year contract yesterday. A crucial ocean current is showing signs of collapse. A current carrying warm water from the tropics to the North Atlantic has become slower and less resilient due to melting of Arctic ice, and a collapse within the next few days would cause drastic and dramatic weather changes on both sides of the Atlantic, but scientists cannot seem to agree on the timeline. The Federal Reserve is expected to raise interest rates again today. Harvard is facing a federal civil rights inquiry over their legacy admissions. The practice gives an advantage to applicants with family members who attended the school or friends who contributed to the school. It overwhelmingly benefits whites and wealthy applicants. And Ronnie James is in the headlines, the son of WNBA superstar, the legendary LeBron James. He suffered a cardiac arrest while practicing with his team, the USC Trojans. We're going to be talking about that and what we can do to protect our student athletes. It's the number one cause of death amongst our student athletes, cardiac arrest. In Chicago, well, Chicago's still one of the top 20 cities in the world with the worst air quality, thanks to, they say, the wildfires in Canada, but I'm sure there's much more to it than that. Today, we're going to have a high of 91 degrees. The heat is creeping up this way, everybody, partly cloudy and hazy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, severe thunderstorms today. You will have a high of 96 degrees. In Major League Baseball, the Mariners 9, the Twins 7, the Crosstown Series in which our Cubs and our White Sox here in Chicago play one another. Well, last night, the Cubs were triumphant, 7-3 over the White Sox. What's going to happen tonight with the Cubs and the White Sox? Well, we'll know by tomorrow. In the World Cup FIFA fight, well, the United States team has an opportunity to do something that no male or female team has done, and that is have a three-peat. They won their first game. Will they win against the Netherlands today? We do not know, but we will find out. In the WNBA, the Aces 107, the Sky 95. The Mystics will be meeting the Lynx tonight. Let's get right to it, everybody. Let's talk about, I'm so glad that we're able to talk about this today, because we need to look at what's happening with our student athletes. Joining attorney C.K. Hoffler is her law partner. Attorney Shannon Holmes has a brilliant book helping us to guide our student athletes so that they can become CEOs of their entire ecosystem, which of course is their health as well. We've got Dr. Shanina Knighton, our health expert here. Of course, she's a registered nurse and an infection preventionist. Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, Esquire from Rainbow Push, senior pastor of the vaunted Douglas Memorial Community Church, the chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition, attorney Daryl Jones. Just very quickly, CK, you and attorney Shannon Holmes have started a practice to do what?
Yes, Santita. We and four other attorneys. There's six of us all total. A practice to protect college athletes and really some high school athletes because they can get NIL money, name, image, and license money. And as Shannon's book, and he'll talk more about this, states, these college athletes, these young athletes have to treat themselves like CEOs. CEOs have legal advisors, which is what our group does, an NIL law group, medical advisors, which is very germane to this conversation, financial advisors, because these kids, these young kids, could get hundreds of thousands of dollars in NIL money. Young kids. And as you said, for some kids, this is their big shot. So they're sending some of that money home, but they need to be protected on all levels. So we felt it important enough. Of course, I'm inspired by my two children who are, Division I college athletes. And this group felt, and all of us are seasoned, trial lawyers, many are commercial lawyers and have negotiated, because these NIL deals are contracts. And so we've done a lot of negotiations, and we just felt that we would be able to provide this guidance, this service to communities, because many of the communities, many of the parents and the students don't have a clue about the ramifications of NIL money and the health issues and the financial consequences. So Shannon Holmes I'm proud that we launched yesterday, and he's one of my partners in this venture, and he's just an outstanding lawyer out of Dallas, Texas. And he's been representing athletes and folks in the entertainment industry for a while. So his perspective on this is, I think, acute and very important because he's been in this space for a very long time.
Well, absolutely. And so we welcome you back to the show. I'm so glad that you're here once again, Attorney Shannon Holmes. And I want to get your perspective on this, because the fact is, this was shocking. Although this is it's not rare and it's not infrequent. This happens every 3 days to high school student athletes, according to the studies. A death from cardiac arrest. Indeed, the number one killer of these student athletes is cardiac arrest. And we see people being called conspiracy theorists as they speculate about what might have happened here. And I would urge you not to do that, everybody. This is becoming absolutely fascist when we cannot talk. We dare not mention different different things that might have driven this. It's just not right. It's not right, and it's unscientific. In science, you put everything, Dr. Knighton, on the table, everything, and you let the chips fall where they may. We need to know what happened. We need to know what's happening. We're seeing people collapse on camera. A lot of things are happening today. We need to know. Attorney Holmes, who, of course, the James family have access to some of the best legal assistance, some of the best medical care, and on and on and on. But every family does not have that. Every family does not have that. First of all, your reaction to uh, this cardiac arrest and the fact that it does happen to these student athletes. This is the number one killer of our student athletes, Attorney Holmes.
Well, thank you. Good morning, Santita, CK, and others. Thank you for having me. Again, my reaction, I was quite shocked, like everyone else, anticipating and thinking that because he has access to the best medical care available, that he's in the he's been examined and probably in the best shape of any young person's life that they can be at that point in their life. But these things happen, right? And so I think really this goes back to, and this is no knock on the James family. I think this is across the board. We all just anticipate that our kids are healthy, right? And until or unless something happens like this, you don't put kids through rigorous testing like you do as we age. We begin to take on more tests and we do more studies, but it's not normal for kids. We just expect and anticipate that they're in the best shape of their life. Here's an interesting note, Santita. This is something similar happened to one of Shaquille O'Neal's sons about 2 years ago. And he had to have heart surgery. And so it's interesting that they both are from very famous families, high-profile athlete families, and yet they both have had these heart conditions. I think to follow up on CK's thing, oftentimes, and outside of these guys, oftentimes kids are going in these programs, these college programs as college athletes, and they go through some basic physicals. But I think there's a two-part problem here. The universities only put them through certain tests because they want them on campus producing. And the young people only want to go through certain tests because they just want to get there and start playing. And then the other part now is because they're looking at it from a financial and economic perspective. The other piece of this is that, sadly, that, yes, the James family is prepared to take on any medical issue that happens from a financial perspective, but often there are other kids who are not. And the way this system is set up now, the families are the first resource for insurance. So if there's an issue with the kid, his family's health insurance kicks in first before any other assistance kicks in. And so often, as we know, there are many families, primarily from our communities, who don't have that health insurance care. And so then there's this ongoing dispute with respect to who's going to cover the kids' medical expenses. And third thing is many of these kids have issues like this that is happening to LeBron James' son, unfortunately, and then they can't play, and then they lose their scholarship, and then they never get a chance to go to college because the college won't honor any academic pursuits. And then they're left without that opportunity to, one, to get a college education, and then two, to go on and have a fruitful life. So there are a lot of moving pieces to these things.
So what's next, do you imagine? Do you think the public have a right to know what is going on, not just with Bronny James, but with all these athletes? Because they're collapsing. Attorney Holmes, they're having cardiac arrest. I mean, I was surprised to hear that this is the number one killer. I mean, are they being over practiced? I mean, there's so many questions that I have.
Well, absolutely. And we all want to know, right? We know they're being over practiced, right? I have the privilege of representing college coaches, and I know for a fact across the board that they're set. I think they're supposed to practice 20 hours a week during certain windows. They're all exceeding 20 hours a week. Now, are they being, and I'm talking about during summertime now, right? Spring and summer, there's some specific hours that they're supposed to work with the team, et cetera. But that's not happening. And in addition to that, are they being examined before, during, or after that period? And they're not. The only times most of these athletes are examined by medical personnel is if they're injured or if they speak up and say something's bothering them. Otherwise, there's no before, during, or after testing occurring. You ask the question, what happens next? I think this is one of another big thing that we've got to take on in this country with our young people and with college and athletics. And as we see Attorney Ben Crump now dealing with the lawsuits in Northwestern and some of the hazing and things of that sort, we often don't look at the pressures that these young athletes are under to perform and to show up and to practice and to meet and to run and to work out as a form of hazing, as a form of pushing them beyond what they're capable of doing. I think we've got to revisit that. And we've got to revisit how they're evaluated medically, the testing that they did, and to make sure that they're healthy in these pursuits.
Reverend Dr. Yuri, your reaction to this?
Well, there's a good morning to you, Santita, and to my colleagues. There's a lot of public interest. There's a lot of public health concern. But then, of course, there is the presumption that public figures and their families have a different level of privacy than the rest of us. We don't know what may have contributed to this cardiac arrest. We don't even know what the arrest was, right? All we know is that there's a cardiac-related issue that required an emergency response. And was it related to something that could have been a byproduct of maybe medication he was taking, maybe something that may have been hereditary or structural deficit, anything, right? It could have been the exertion, but you just don't know. And to create this swirl while they're still going through assessment and diagnosis, trying to reach some conclusion, some resolution of what that treatment is, I think the doctors know how to wall themselves off from that and stay focused on treating their patient. But I think our zeal to have quick answers before we have really good evidence and good information upon which to base it creates this tension, right? I'd rather be thorough than fast. And when we want things in the soundbite, in the news cycle, we sometimes miss some things or reach some conclusions and then have to go back and unring a bell because we chased the rabbit down the hole instead of giving time for all of the information to unfold and figure out what is this convergence of factors that have contributed to this injury that Bronny has experienced. It's what we often see in the day-to-day treatment of just regular folk. We see it happening in emergency departments across the country. Regular, everyday folk go in, and if there's some experience they're having, we see this kind of bias in the healthcare process, depending on where you live, where you're from, what your socioeconomic status may be, that we start reaching conclusions. The system starts reaching conclusions on what your issue might be. I think it would serve us well to be interested, but also to be patient. To at the end of the day, allow for Bronny to receive the level of care that he needs without trying to put the requirement that there be public answers given for what really is a private care issue.
But, I think that what we need to do is explore, right? Because I like to arrive at conclusions. I don't like to jump to them like you, attorney, Reverend Attorney Yuri. I do believe, though, when you have this kind of spotlight and you have this happening so frequently, this happens to a body of students, a body of student athletes. They die of cardiac arrest. The personal side, I don't want to dig into his medical records. That would not be right. But I think we need to look at what's happening here because this has happened before over and over and over again. And it's happened to several people I knew here growing up here in Chicago. People who just dropped dead playing basketball, who are on their way to big programs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And because of that, I think we need to talk about it. What is disturbing to me, Dr. Knighton, is that we're closing off different avenues of pursuit. And that for me is unscientific and it's wrong. Because if he took aspirin and he can't take it, we need to know that. if he took a shot and he can't, and it was too much for him? We need to know that. We need to know. We all need to know these things for us, not for him, because I don't want to gossip about anybody. You ain't lived till you've been in the Inquirer, and my family have been there, so I ain't feeling that. Trust me. But I think we need to be able to have a discussion. But for the corporate media to call some people who say, well, if it was this, then you're a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, what is this? Can we not have the discussion? Dr. Knighton, I think we need to have a full spectrum discussion about what's driving these cardiac arrests, because we don't know.
And that's the thing, though, is that it is so many different factors, right? And I guess I could use the analogy. So, for example, I know that I will talk about, like, let's say certain ingredients in foods, and I know for sure, like, they've been attached to carcinogens and tumors, in mice. So let's just say that that particular ingredient is in, let's say, a sandwich dressing. Let's say it's also in your bread, that the kid is eating. Let's say it's in the lunch meat. Mm-hmm. And they consume that sandwich, every single day throughout all of their childhood years. And then you look up and at the age of 30, 40 years old, there's a diagnosis of cancer, right? The problem is there's this attribute of then people saying, okay, is it genetic? Was it in their DNA? There's never a thought about potentially what is consumed or what is done up until that point that could actually lead to that disposition. Also, too, it is well known that when we talk about, let's say, FDA and the flags that are given around foods being safe, we don't talk about the threshold of ingredients, that would then predispose someone to these conditions. So I'm bringing that up, Santita, to say that because there are so many factors, starting somewhere and then being able to build that out to understand what the possibilities are, it makes sense. But it cannot be done in a manner of where things are biased and people automatically want to block out other causes or other issues because it's not typical. Nothing is typical. And while we want to keep putting things inside of one category, we cannot, which is hence why we have health disparities that exist amongst minorities, is because healthcare for the majority is what was thought about when recommendations were made. That is why we can look up, and again, we can talk about Band-Aids that don't match. We can talk about the fact that certain screening tests, are not as sensitive to the African American population or might cancel us out from transplants. So I'm bringing that up to say that unless we start to look at additional factors, start to look at the outliers, and start to understand that other possibilities are possibilities, then we will continue to go down this pathway because, unfortunately, while science is discovery, we cannot do it in a biased manner that is going to cancel out other people's hypotheses just because it does not match the majority.
Let's talk about it, everybody. And we want to hear more about your practice, Attorney Shannon Holmes and Attorney C.K. Hopper, because perhaps this can help. I believe it can help these parents whose children play Little League. Parents get into fights at Little League games, Attorney Holmes and Attorney Hopper, because they're desperate for their kids to get on the big stage. This is big business, big money, and we need to talk about it. We need to know what's happening. How can we keep our children safe? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. All right, everybody. Okay. Now, let me ask you this, Attorney Darrell Jones. In this heat, are there any special precautions you take as you run and train throughout the year?
Oh yeah, I mean the special precautions that that I take and that that generally are recommended. Number one is that we do our training very early in the morning, but before the the highest part of the day hits. But hydration is extremely important So, you have to be certain that, for instance, generally every July around my birthday, I'm in Chicago and I run the Chicago Rock and Roll Half Marathon. And typically in Chicago in July, it's oppressive heat. And I can recall several times they have the heat advisory that's out there and everything else. So you have to be properly hydrated. You have to be really mindful of what's happening with your body. Are you feeling dizzy at any point or anything along those lines? At that point, they even had ice that they were putting on the sides of the streets for the runners so that they could, put the ice on their back or on your chest or wherever to cool yourself down. But there are all these different precautions that you've got to take. You can't go full throttle and, during the heat of the summer, particularly if it's just the training piece to it. The thing that, I always tell folks is that, when it comes to runners, our sport is most sports punishment, right? So most sports, you punish the players by having them run. Well, that's our sport. And so, as a result of that, we are trying to be very, very conscious of our bodies and very conscious of any changes that we're experiencing, because runners push themselves. That's what we do. Distance runners push themselves, and you want to see how far you can push the body and what you can accomplish. And I don't think that's dissimilar than many of the athletes that CK and Shannon Holmes were speaking of that are the target of the colleges and university and what's going on there, that they're going to push their bodies because there's an ultimate goal that they're seeking, and so they're going to do that. But the whole big piece to it, I think, is certainly monitoring your body to know what's going on and being willing to speak out. And if you have the countervailing story that you've come from a financially distressed situation, and so you're trying to reach this big payday, you may be less inclined to talk about some of the injuries that you're feeling, and that could end up having dramatic consequences.
I just
what?
No, please jump in.
And I'm just going to say, and this is something else, and it is, I don't think that for example, there are a lot of youth now, and I don't know how it goes in the athlete world, and maybe someone that is from that world can speak to this, but the energy drink consumption, amongst, just children and students it's increased. But we know that energy drinks just in itself, like that can disrupt
1 minute
electrical system. It can cause, heart arrhythmias, meaning that the heart doesn't have, like, let's say, its normal rhythm that it would, and it is one of those risk factors that is associated, with heart failure, cardiac arrest, and strokes. And so I don't know, I know like it's one of the things that's discussed, but it's not something that's regulated when we are talking about, like, let's say caffeine and athletes, and potentially how even that, I would say, combination of things in itself can actually increase that risk as well. And so, again, I think it's hard to know without what they're consuming, their exercise regimen, how they're being pushed. It's kind of hard to be able to make, let's say, that diagnosis without
10 seconds
and the full scope of their lives.
Stand by.
Stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Oh, yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We've been talking about LeBron James Jr., Bronny James, who we found out suffered a cardiac arrest event on Monday. Thankfully, he is out of ICU. He is recovering. But a lot of kids don't have the high profile. And what about insurance? Who takes care of that? What about the follow-up care? What about the care prior to our children getting into these programs? I mean, should they be screened genetically? I mean, what should be happening here? And I mean, and how do we do it? Of course, Reverend Todd Geary, Esquire, Attorney Daryl Jones, Dr. Shanina Knighton, a registered nurse, infection preventionist, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Attorney Hoffler, I want to shift this to Attorney Shannon Holmes, because you've written a book. It really is a how-to for these student athletes. And I think that this is needed more than ever when we find that the number one killer of these young people is cardiac arrest. How do you protect yourself?
So yes, Santita, I think, in the book,
First,
which
the
is
name
called
of
Chief
your book.
Executive Athlete.
First, the name of your book and where
Right,
we can
so-
buy it. Right.
Right. So Chief Executive Athlete, How to Run Your Sports Career Like a Fortune 500 Company. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, or via the internet. And in it, and my position is just simply that the approach is that and this is a prime example, how parents and athletes need to approach this as more of a business, like running a company. You cannot continue to approach this as you're just a really well fine-tuned athlete going out, running on a court or running on a field and getting compensated for that. You have to approach this as you're providing a service. And if a company's providing a service, what do they have? Well, they have a general counsel, they have an attorney, they have tax people, they have financial planners, they have marketing folks, they have social media folks. So you have all these components, and then you have health professionals as well to make sure that the team members are well taken care of. So again, the thought was that if you approach it as a business, you will take all these things in consideration when going to provide your service. And this is just another step in that direction, right? So I think parents will have to approach how their athletes, especially when you get to the college level now, because of the NIL opportunities that Attorney Hoffler was talking about earlier, you have to consider all factors, get proper medical attention, get proper testing. Now, one of the things that's offered at the collegiate level that's not often talked about are disability policies for college athletes. However, that usually comes in a little later in their career, usually after their first or second year when they're starting to show some promise as becoming a professional athlete. There are certain rankings and evaluations that are used to determine the level of coverage that they qualify for. And so when you have an athlete, say a second-year athlete, and he shows promise, could easily come out and go to the next level, then he's evaluated, a value is provided, and then the universities will often provide the policies for the athletes because it protects them, one, against injury, but it also protects them if they're injured and their projected draft status for the upcoming year falls because of their injury, they're protected against that change in draft status. But the third point to that, Santita, is that parents can also provide and get those policies. So when I talk about the young men that are often injured, that are then left without a scholarship, and then left without opportunity to get an education and to have a fulfilling career, this is a product that would allow them to, one, be compensated if they're injured and can't go on. They would have gained some compensation from the disability policy. So again, when we talk about approaching athletics at this level as a chief executive athlete, these are some of the things we talk about in the book and some of the considerations that need to be made when we're sending our kids off into these programs. We can't just rely on either the collegiate and or the professional programs to do what we know needs to be done in our best interest. So we encourage athletes to make sure that they're getting a team. We encourage athletes to make sure they have legal counsel and advisors around them who can make these suggestions and help them pursue some of these products and services to ensure that they have the things they need to fulfill the career interests that they're going for.
So do you how does the school react to you when you come in with all of that? Do they distance themselves from you? Do they have more respect for you, Attorney Holmes? How does that work? Because, we like to have people who are as ill-informed as possible because you're more controllable that way. But if you walk in looking at it as a business, like the Ball family, for all of the bombast of their father, they see this as a business. I respect that. And he's positioned his sons accordingly.
Oh, Absolutely. I think the Ball family, for all the talk that occurred during that time, he positioned his sons accordingly. When you look at the Sanders family, Deion Sanders and his family, they approach it, they understand. Deion completely understands that this is a business, and he has taught his sons that it's a business, and they approach it that way. But you're absolutely right, Santita. When you go into these places, of course they don't want you fully aware of all the things that are occurring. Of course, they want you in the dark as an athlete, because it's been an environment where the coaches control, particularly on these college campuses, and that's the environment that they like to keep. However, the goal here is to inform now and make sure our athletes are aware. And when we go on these campuses, and once we make them aware that we're here, our athlete is informed, then obviously their whole approach to the athlete changes, and how they're treating the athlete, and the athlete becomes more aware of some of the information and opportunities that are available to him.
Well, and of course, if this is your approach, CK, you need to understand risk, right? Because the big pushback on this top tennis player, I'm a big tennis fan, was that he didn't want to get the shot. And he said, look, he said, my body is my business. I don't feel comfortable with this. He was blocked from countries. He couldn't play in Wimbledon and all this other stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, when your body is your business, people need to pay attention to you. And I think that should go for everybody. But Attorney Hoffler?
Well, I think it should go for everyone. I think one of the things we have to realize when you come in and you're advising an athlete, a college athlete, the school understands on the one hand that the college athlete needs your advice. Why? Because when it comes to issues, the schools have their attorney. If it involves a collective that's giving NIL money, or even if it involves a medical issue, those collectives have their attorney. The schools have their attorney. No one is advising the athlete. And the athlete is the one who's putting himself or herself out there, their bodies. No one is there advising them, because every other entity, every other stakeholder has their own separate counsel. So in many respects, sometimes you're in a situation where the school and the athlete have a legal conflict. The school can't advise the athlete because they have a conflict of interest, potentially, depending upon the issue. So it makes good sense to have counsel, but it also creates, a lot of people don't like to see lawyers coming. Why? Because lawyers are going to negotiate on behalf of their clients if they're doing it the right way. So we understand, families need to understand the power that they have in these billion-dollar industries, because their children are the ones that are helping the billion-dollar industry. So they do have the negotiating power to say, I want my counsel. And by the way, many families do have their counsels just behind the scenes. People don't realize and know about it, that the lawyers are negotiating deals or negotiating terms or negotiating for the athlete. It's just that in our community, we don't see that as often, unless you have someone from a legacy family that has been there, done that, and understands. We see the story, so many stories now that come out, like how did Michael Jordan, how did Air Jordan, how was that created? His mother was the person behind that, who was negotiating on his behalf, but there was legal counsel also involved in helping. So I say all of this to say, a lot of times people don't like lawyers. They don't like to see us coming because they think, oh, there's some litigation, something. But to protect your children at these young ages, sometimes that's what it takes. And a lot of people think, well, I can't afford a lawyer. I don't know any lawyers. A lot of the lawyers will do this on a contingency fee basis. So it's independent, depending upon what type of work they're doing. So it's just important for people in our community to understand that when it comes to your most prized asset, the most important thing to you, which for most people it is their children, protecting them, much like CEOs protect themselves, is critical to their longevity and putting them in the best position. Because once they get injured, game over. But suppose you have disability insurance.
But that takes me there. Should part of your negotiation as you're going to these schools, to these programs, should it be, what if I sustain a career-ending injury? Will the rest of my education be paid for? Will I get health care? Should all of the, there's so many things.
Well, there is that discussion.
Okay. Is that
It's that
is that
discussion
the
taking
commonplace
place.
discussion, or is that the discussion that they have with you
No,
and Attorney Holmes?
it's not a commonplace discussion.
Okay.
Some people know to do that. It is not, in my impression, and Shannon, I would be encouraged to hear what you have to say about it. It's not a commonplace discussion because some of the kids are so eager to get there to play. They're at a Power 5 elite football or basketball program. They're so excited. They're heavily recruited. You know, I can only speak from personal experience. You got coaches flying in helicopters onto high school campuses for your child. You're like, for who? And so all of this hype, and you as a parent have to bring it back down to reality and look at what is in the best interest of your children. And remember, when they turn 18 and they go to college, they don't have to keep you in the loop on anything, by the way. So it is something that is a process. And the kids, they really sometimes don't know, and sometimes parents don't know. So one of the challenges and one of the things that we want to do is bring education, bring information to families while they're in high school. Because if you don't know that you can, if they want your child, you say, I need to have a disability policy, they're going to give you a disability policy. If they want your child, because otherwise the basic rules, usually you sign a 1-year engagement, it's renewable, you know, when you go into these schools. But if you do get injured, what happens? They're not going to necessarily honor, some schools do, some schools have. They will allow you to have, to continue your scholarship for 4 years. That's a rarity, and they don't have an obligation. And the NCAA doesn't make it that they must do that. Whereas back in the day, many years ago, friends of mine I know who went and played basketball, let's say 40, 50 years ago, they had a guaranteed 4-year education, and it was just a means to an end. It's very different now. The transfer portal has changed business as we know it, has really changed the whole trajectory of how college football players play, because you could be heavily recruited, and then you get there and there are 45 new transfers that you knew nothing about. Mm-hmm. The football team looks completely different. And guess what? Those transfers are more seasoned, more experienced, and they're going to get precedent over you. So you may not play. So it's a whole different trajectory. This transfer portal thing has completely changed and shaped the college football industry in a different way than it was 5 years ago. So as these things are evolving and our kids are caught, there's some kids that never get out of the transfer portal. How about that? They enter the transfer portal, so they can't go back and play where they were. They don't get picked up, so they have no place to go. Now, if you're on scholarship and don't have money, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Well, and you know what? Given that kind of pressure, let me say this, given that kind of pressure, if you feel that something's off in your body, you're going to ignore it. Particularly if you're looking back at home and your family needs you to make it. And a lot of these kids are in that position, and that's something that is concerning me. And I'm going to say this: I would not pull Bronny James out of that. Why? Because he feels he has something to prove also. You know, I mean, are his parents endowed? Absolutely. But it's clear that he has the understanding that he has got to make it for himself, and that's fair because he needs to be a whole human being. And that's one of the things, you know, just hold on one moment, CK. You know, that concerns me, Dr. Knighton. I mean, are there any warning signs? Because you helped us at CK, she said there's a difference between cardiac arrest and a heart attack. I need you to explain that very quickly. And are there any signs for cardiac arrest? I mean, is there any advance warning, or does it just happen just like that?
So just really quickly, so the difference being between a heart attack and cardiac arrest, heart attack more so being arteries becoming blocked somehow. You know, the heart muscle is typically not getting the blood supply that it needs. And so as a result of it going blocked, so that meaning a hardening of the arteries, it can be plaque, you know, that's in the arteries. It can be clots. So that's what would be, let's say, a heart attack, whereas cardiac arrest is when somebody's heart stops pumping blood around their body, and they might, let's say, stop breathing normally. And so typical signs, you know, which again, it can happen so fast, you know, that it's not about days, you know, or sometimes even hours of getting these symptoms, but someone being lightheaded or dizzy, somebody fainting or feeling like you're nearly getting ready to faint, being short of breath, having, like, let's say maybe some wheezing that's unexplained, a pounding heartbeat, some chest pain or discomfort, or just even saying that their heartbeat feels irregular. And so typically when things like this happen, it's not dismissing what someone is saying to you. It's really taking it serious and then finding out maybe later if it was something else. But anytime someone actually says any of these symptoms, especially as a young adult, it's important to treat it or absolutely address it. So call 911 and seek out emergency services as soon as possible.
Well, let me just go around the table. We only have a few more minutes, but this is something I promise you I'm going to reach out and find a cardiologist. I want to find a whole range of scientists, quite frankly, because people are speculating about a whole lot. And indeed, the Daily Mail is saying that Bronny's father is scared and devastated because this could be a career ender for him. We don't know. There's so much that we don't know, but we certainly need to pray for this family and pray for all of these families. So many people are dealing with this. Um, Going forward, what do you want to see, Attorney Jones?
Well, Santita, one of the things that I'd like to see happen is this. Is that, I know that, and it may be in existence already, and Shannon or CK perhaps can speak to it, but, in NFL, in the Major League Baseball, and, NBA, we have all of these players associations. Be certain that all the rights of the players are protected and that they're given safe environments from which to operate. I'm wondering if we have anything similar like that for our NCAA athletes. It's not the NCAA itself, because they're concerned with money. The school is concerned with money. Well, who is it? What is the entity? Is there an association that is exclusively in place to protect the players? And I think that's one of the things that I like to begin to explore if such an entity does not exist, because our athletes deserve it. And so we can be also certain that, when situations like this occur, that they're being given the proper attention. I think it was CK or Shannon that indicated that, they wanted to be certain that the doctors were there, the facilities were there for the athletes when things occur and happen, and not just special incidents. So that's one of the things that I would like to see grow from this is to have that exploration done to see what we can do to be certain that we fully protect our college athletes.
Reverend Dr. Yuri, because it's college athletes, it's high school athletes. I mean, our children who are in grammar school are even being pushed.
Yeah, there's a difference between recreation and then monetization. The NCAA, to Daryl Jones's point, makes a tremendous amount of money off of college athletics. And so when we start looking at the transaction cost, there has to be a system of accountability that protects the interest of students. One of the things that you have with student athletes who just want to play ball, many times they're coming from poor families. Many times they're the first to attend college. They don't understand the culture, the environment, nor the expectations. And so there needs to be a system in place that provides protections for their interests and rights so that they don't get hustled by the system. But the other thing that we can do in the meantime is require the NCAA to begin to evaluate whether or not these schools are adhering to the rules and expectations when it comes to everything from practices to follow through. It is the cutting of corners that leads to the tragedies that happen on courts and playing fields across the NCAA, and we hear of them every single year. There's always something. And so I think those are the things that can be done now before and as students are returning to the practice fields, getting ready for the college football season coming up. Make sure that the NCAA is doing its piece. It just can't count receipts. It's got to assume the obligation and the responsibility to keep student athletes safe and to make sure that the schools, who often have a lot of pressure from boosters and other fundraisers to compete and to compete at a high level, we got to make sure that that does not taint the process to the point that it's done at the expense of our students.
Dr. Knighton, how do we keep our kids safe? I mean, what do you tell your child if you feel shooting in the arm, if you feel nausea? I mean, what do you tell them to be on the lookout for?
So I think that's it, Santita. So so the symptoms that you just mentioned, but also just having that conversation with them of understanding the difference between working hard and what's a normal sensation from working hard, and then what's typically too much, and when you need to actually seek out help immediately. Meaning, a lot of times it's just that kids go underdiagnosed with conditions that they may already have. So if someone has asthma, that is undiagnosed or it's not treated, them doing that, extra run or that extra hard run is actually what could trigger those symptoms. And so it's really just having the conversation and constantly having the conversation. But even too, when it comes down to presence, is being present to even know that if you are attending, let's say, your kids' practices and you're seeing how they're doing and how they're performing, paying attention to those signs also. And I know that that's not the case all the time, let's say, for a lot of the older kids with the older sports, but we have to remember that even too, some of these issues can still happen to younger children or younger athletes. So paying attention to what's going on with them and what it is that they're saying is important. Even asking them, are you having any chest pain? Does your heartbeat seem like it's off? Are you feeling a little bit short of breath? You're not feeling lightheaded, are you? So being able to ask some of those questions to them and just see what they come up with. And it's not to try to make symptoms, happen. So it is a balance between that with kids because, I got kids that start telling you something going on just so they can get out of something. But it's important to have that conversation instead of not having it.
I only have a couple minutes left. 1 minute for you, Attorney Holmes. First of all, your book, how can we get it, the name of it, how we can get it, and what's next?
Santita, really
again,
quick,
thanks.
I'm sorry.
Just very quickly, I got 2
Just
minutes.
5 seconds. I got you. Also, the other thing is making sure that a health history is done. A lot of parents don't tend to do that, but that is so important in letting the school know or whoever know what's going on with your kid.
That's important. Attorney Holmes?
Hi, again, thanks, Santita. Again, the book is Chief Executive Athlete, How to Run Your Sports Career Like a Fortune 500 Company. It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble's online. I would just say I think Attorney Jones's point, no, there is no union for the players. They have fought many times to achieve that goal and haven't been successful. But Attorney Jones, I have a solution. If on any pre-Labor Day in the fall, those young people decide they're not going to play across this country, I'm sure that they will get some of the things they want. I just think at some point they're going to have to band together and decide that on the biggest day in college football, we're all anticipating Labor Day game, that Saturday and Labor Day weekend, that they're just not going to play. We've seen it happen in Missouri where they protested, and within a few days, the chancellor of the whole university system resigned because the players made demands and said that they were not going to play on the upcoming Saturday if their demands weren't met. So we know it works. They just have to come together and make that decision. Again, thanks, Santita. I think what's next, we just need to implement now, making sure that the kids getting all types of health examinations, cardiologists are sending them full examinations before they go on these fields and these courts. And I just see where Ole Miss just implemented mental health training as a part of their physical training that's a part of their football program going forward. So those things and those steps will continue to happen and help these programs across the country.
CK, I'm going to get you on the other side. Everybody, I love you. God bless you, Alex. Thank you for a great show. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel so you get closing thoughts from this magnificent panel. God bless you, everybody. Have a great day. CK, you're...
Hey, Santita?
Yeah, babe.
Yes, I gotta run into a meeting, but I want to leave it at what Shannon said. I think she touched on all the points that I would have made and then some. So great show. I hope we do a follow-up and find out what concrete things are happening across the country, because I think that there are some things that are happening, but much more needs to happen.
Yeah, I think this is an opportunity, CK, for us to, everybody, for us to talk about this. I see an opportunity here, and to put everything on the table, everything, people are speculating, and they should be able to. That's all science is, nothing but speculation, everybody, until you prove something, and then they can get thrown out the window at any moment. So, let us, you know, let us speculate, let us find out, because I think this is awful that we're losing so many of these young people to this. And I had to reflect. I had to go back. I was like in my youth, I lost a couple of people I knew, and you were like, wait a minute, what happened here? And what happened, and what's happening? Why? Uh, just Reverend Uri, is there anything you want to add?
Well, just the follow up. One of the things that Reverend Jackson did during the pandemic, when there was conversation about adjusting the NCAA structure to be able to play these games, is that there were a number of calls with NCAA leadership and some of the heads of the school conferences to ask the question, what are you doing to make sure that you have protocols in place to keep students safe? I think that has to be part of the conversation. Just a letter of inquiry should be sufficient to get something moving, to start raising the awareness that we've not taken our eye off the ball, that student safety, student athlete safety is still important. It's part of the civil rights agenda, because there are economic interests and other interests attached to it, academic interests among them. But I do think that this is important, and that when you have your own subject matter experts to engage with whoever's on the other side of the table, it helps to make sure that there's the necessary tension and attention to the conversation to make sure that you get to substantive answers and just not sound bites to move the discussion forward.
Yeah, I just want some answers. Attorney Jones, is he still there? Okay. Well, Attorney Holmes, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Going forward, what do you want to see happen? I mean, I don't want to violate this family's privacy at all. That having been said, this is happening so frequently. I think that, we need to find out as much as we can so that, people who don't have this kind of spotlight and who don't have access, who don't even know that the care is there, that they get it. I had weight loss surgery 19 years ago, come August. And you know what I found out as I was pursuing this particular procedure? I had something called the bilio bypass, everybody. It's commonly known as the duodenal switch. I found out that this is the best surgery for Black people and people of color, but we don't know anything about it. It's the least performed within our community, even though it would help us the most, right? It's something that people routinely who are overseas, who are wealthy and white, they get it. And they don't have weight issues anymore. If you eat a certain way, do certain, you need to follow certain protocols. That having been said, but we don't even know that this surgery exists. And it has been documented that this is the best weight loss surgery for people of color and Black folks in particular. There's just so much that we don't know, because we have to understand that, and this, Dr. Knighton, medicine is performed on a whole lot of different levels. When you go to the Mayo Clinic and to the Cleveland Clinic, you don't even feel like you're in a hospital. It doesn't smell like a hospital. There's carpeting everywhere, beautiful hotels connected. When you're up in Mayo, you don't even have to go outside. You can take the tunnels and go into any building and get some of the best food in the world. It's a whole different space. And I think it's important for us to understand that it's not just bifurcated or even trifurcated. It's just there is medicine. There are remedies to which the elite among us have access, and then the rest of us just have to figure it out. And that makes me incredibly sad and mad, because everybody's got the right to the tree of life. Everybody. So, Attorney Holmes, what's the way forward? Is this a teachable moment for us?
I think it is. I think, again, I'm not as interested, so to speak. I should say, personally, I'm not so interested in necessarily what happened with Bronny, but more so that we take this as a point that, hey, I think we look at the factors. One, well endowed family, so obviously there's opportunity and access to the best health care professionals in the world, and yet he has this event. So we need to look at how do we approach this just globally for these young athletes, making sure that they're getting the proper health education, they're getting the proper testing. And I think we just need to magnify that issue. I mean, again, as I said earlier, I think we sweep it under the rug that young people are healthy across the board. Mm-hmm. But I think this should highlight the fact that that's not always the case. There are things going on inside our bodies that we don't necessarily see and or feel. And I'm not a healthcare professional. I do live with one, but I'm not one. And so I mean, I don't know, what it takes to and if these things are detectable. I don't know. That's not my area. But what I'm just suggesting that we just need to go a step further when evaluating these young athletes. And that needs to be made a priority across the country and all these campuses, making sure they're getting the proper testing and evaluation, because these things are happening too often.
Absolutely. Dr. Shanina Knighton, if you're still there, is there anything you'd like to add or close us out with?
Honestly, not at all. Like, I've had an appreciation at a conversation that's been had today, specifically around like recommendations and just the different things that are being done, from the legal standpoint, just medically, just thinking through, like, not even cutting corners. And I think that that's what it comes down to. And Santita, I think we all agree with you in echoing that in order for us to be able to make change or for us to be able to know what's going on, like, we have to be able to put all of the possibilities out there and being able to evaluate them. So I'm just hopeful, if anything, that it is being addressed, from all of these different aspects.
Yeah, I say put it all out there. You have to put it all out there. And when you do, then you can come up with the answers. I am tired of covering for big business. And that's what we're doing. When you shut down the discussion and you call people conspiracy theorists when they're talking about health. Number one, conspiracy theory is a conspiracy from the CIA. They came up with the term so they could shut down the discussion about the JFK assassination. Most Americans 60 years later do not believe that this man was killed by Lee Harvey Oswald, who could barely shoot a gun. Nobody believes that. Sirhan was in front of Robert Kennedy. His fatal shot came from behind his ear. Y'all need to stop lying. How about that piece? Just stop. And let's ask and ask all the questions, answer all the questions so that we can be well. Because my point is for us to live. Everybody else might not have that point, but that's certainly what I want. And to live well, to live healthfully. I think that's fair. And it's right. It's just. So I love you all. Love you, Jewel. Love you, Francis. Love all of you. And I want to thank you. And you know what, Attorney Holmes, you got to come back, because I think this is something that we're going to have to unpack over the next few days, this particular issue. Because I want you to walk us through, because a lot of kids exhibit a lot of athletic promise at 9, 10, 11 years of age. They're targeting children younger and younger, Attorney Holmes. And so by the time they get
absolutely.
you know what I mean? So by the time they get to high school, they're already entities. And so, you got to talk to, you know what I mean? Am I wrong here?
No, you're right. You're right. Absolutely right. This whole AAU stuff, especially in basketball, club volleyball for the girls, the club soccer, these young kids, in the rankings when they're second, third, fourth grade, the pressure that's being put on these kids is incredible at a very young age. Yes.
Which could stress you out and give you cardiac arrest also, by the way.
I would imagine, yes.
Yeah, because, you're thinking, I've got to do it. And wait a minute, what if, it's not just if your parents are in poverty. If you have a point to prove, I got to do it. I'm sure among Bronny's proudest moments are when his father says, "Man, I'm so proud of you." I can only imagine. And thank God he has a father who can do that for him. and be with him. But that's why I'm saying I think we've got to. I'm not going to stand. I am not going to be a proxy for Big Pharma, and y'all know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to do that. I want to know what happened to this child and what's happening to our children and people all over the world who are dropping dead everywhere. I want to know what's going on. That's only fair. Now we have something called sudden adult death syndrome. Remember SIDS, sudden infant
Oh,
death
yes.
syndrome. Now we got SADS. You're not going to tell
Wow.
me that it's right for that's right for people just to drop dead. Now what's going on here? Is it in the air? What's going on? What's happening here? No, it's not right. And y'all know it's not right. You know it's not right. You know it. So let's find out what it is. But when we have our children who are these athletes in these income generating sports, you need to walk us through. You need to walk us through, Attorney Shannon Holmes, what parents need to put in place. And you need to let them know that it's never too soon to do it. As if I should tell you how to do your
Absolutely.
business. Forgive me.
No, absolutely. But you know your audience, so we're happy to talk through it.
Yeah, well, I just, you know what? My brothers played football. They went to school on football scholarships. Jesse and
right.
Johnny were at North Carolina A&T. Yusef was at UVA. And I saw the enormous pressure that they were under. And I saw them practicing in the South, in North Carolina, in Virginia, in the heat of the day. And this was 30 plus years ago. I didn't like it then because it worried me. I'm like, hey, I don't even want to be out here. I'm worried about my brothers, and I would observe them closely. And my youngest brother Yusuf, I used to get on his nerves because I tell him after every game, "Let me see your hands," because they'd be very swollen. And he'd come to me and he holds his hands out. I'm like, Yusuf, something's not. I don't like this. I do not like this. And he had a little space because he was the first athlete coming out of their football program at UVA to be immediately accepted into law school. That was the first time in the history of that program that happened. But he's a very disciplined. Well, he's a very disciplined guy. But also, my mother let us know that coming back to this house is not an option for you. You got to make it. Woo! I'm as serious as a cardiac arrest. Okay, no pun. Okay, she made it very clear. So it spurred all of her children to be self-sufficient. I mean, come on. There is no money here, and what money I got left, your father and I are gonna need it when we get old, and now they are. So now they're old. So there we have it. So everybody, please. Oh, but what, Chaparral, you say practices can be 5 to 6 hours and longer. And so, because even though I would think that even though Bronny James was in a cool building, you're still out here in the world, you're dehydrated. I mean, there's just so much. So I want to find out, but I want to find out from you, Attorney Holmes. I'll reach back out to you a little bit later today. What our parents need to put in place to protect their children. And you know what? Since you all want my child, give him the test. Find out what his genetic predispositions are. And don't push that the cost back on me. You want him, you need to let us know what you see. And that's it. So have a blessed day, all of you. Thank you so much. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to say? Is that it? All right. Well, we're out of here. Morning stars, I love you. I'm going to see you tomorrow, God willing. And